We are on page 49, chapter 4, the artificial conscience, heading government acting illegally. We know that corruption exists within every government, whether it be large or small. We know because sometimes they get caught. Sometimes getting caught matters to the larger scheme of things, and sometimes it doesn't. But it is not just individual government officials who behave as though they are above the law. But the government as a body politic also does this, as demonstrated by the Department of Justice going after parents at school board meetings or after individuals after they've been cleared by local governments and police. These actions are not proper, as they are unconstitutional at several levels. Federalism and subsidiarity is overrun. Equality under the law is abolished. Individual rights and liberties are being curtailed. The lines separating powers and defining checks and balances are being blurred. The artificial conscience has failed. But more than that, the extent to which an unelected bureaucracy intrudes upon the lives of individuals and dictates policy to state and local governments is astounding. As Congress seeks to nationalize election law, gun law, abortion law, higher education law, K-12 policy, and marriage law, if they manage to successfully do so, even using the constitutional framework provided to them, this will necessitate taking power away from state and local governments and taking choice and liberties away from the American people. Although Locke believed one cannot relinquish their own freedom voluntarily, as it is impossible to relinquish innate rights, it appears the American people are unaware the temperature of the water in which they, as the frogs, sit has almost reached boiling. I do like that analogy, and I use it like a lot of other people, that boiling the frog analogy. It's one I started using after the birth of my youngest child because I wanted to lose weight and I joined a gym. And even though I was an athlete at one point, it's amazing how quickly a few pregnancies can take all of that away from you. Anyway, I decided to take up running. It wasn't that I was a runner in high school or college. I played soccer, but I was not a long distance runner in any stretch of the imagination. But I loved learning to run at the gym because all those numbers on the treadmill display kept track of things for you. And I just loved looking at them. I would watch them. And how would I do this? How did I learn to run? I would walk for the 5-minute warm up, and then I would run. Okay, I would jog for 1 minute, and then I would walk for 44 minutes. There's like a 45-minute time limit on these treadmills. The next day, I would walk for that 5-minute warm up, and then I would jog for 2 minutes, and then walk for 43 minutes. Now, there was stuff going on in my life, and I would actually go to the gym 2 times a day, 6 days a week. So I did this 2 times a day. So on the first day, I would run for 1 minute and walk for 44 2 times. And then on the second day, I would run for 2 minutes and walk for 43 minutes 2 times. So 5 weeks later, 5 weeks after I started this process, I was jogging 30 minutes straight. And then 3 weeks after that, I was jogging 45 minutes straight. In 2 months, I went from thinking I would never be able to run to jogging 45 minutes with no problem. 2 months. That's all it took. And just imagine the generations of incremental progress, incremental unraveling of the fabric of our country, the incremental tyranny, the incremental taking away of our rights, and the repetitive nature and the changing of the narrative, how they wore away at us and we couldn't even realize it. 2 months. And they've been doing this for generations. Because, I'm jogging 45 minutes now with no problem. And then I could add sprints, zoom up the speed, or hills, increase the incline. And I called this boiling the frog because my body did not really experience the increased difficulty day to day because it was incremental and repetitive. I exposed myself to each step twice a day. Not to mention, I was doing strength training too. So I was getting stronger in other ways. My heart was able to keep up. My muscles were able to keep up. And in only a few very short months, I went from this soft and out of shape person to a rock hard body with sharp angles everywhere. And I think again about all the different directions they are coming at us to destroy the fabric of this country, to take away our liberties, to break the loom upon which our society was built and this tapestry was created. And I think as the American people have kind of been enjoying the water they've been sitting in for generations without getting boiled, without getting cooked, they really haven't noticed how close to boiling the water has become. Our rights, our liberties, our constitutionalism have all been eroded so slowly, so incrementally over such a long period of time and in such a repetitive nature that we barely noticed. Even now, and I can't believe it, there are many who still don't notice. And that takes us all the way back to the Declaration of Independence. Quote, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. We are now accustomed to the hot water. We are accustomed to encroachment of government upon our rights and upon our personal sovereignty. We are accustomed to the government coming in and kind of destroying our way of life. And we become so accustomed to all of this that we have failed to notice that the forms to which we have become accustomed are nothing like the forms that were created to keep the U.S. government in check. Nothing like the forms that were created to protect our rights and liberties. Heading: Tyranny for the Common Good. Each and every mechanism of the artificial conscience of government has been weakened. But this might be seen as the usual wear and tear of the cloth as it ages. As more threads are exposed through this expected and predictable wear and tear, however, they are indeed being intentionally plucked at, pulled gently, but more frequently, tugged angrily, and failing that, otherwise worried away. Now is the part in the conversation where I am sometimes accused of saying there's some vast conspiracy to take away our liberties, to destroy our Constitution, to bring tyranny upon ourselves. That I'm accused that I'm saying that there's some organized strategy and networking between all the agents that would bring about this tyranny over us. But I'm actually not saying that. What I am saying is that there are several components, several actors, several methods, several agents of this destruction of the fabric. And they are all intentionally destroying the fabric, but they don't have to be working together. It's a master plan with some big evil mastermind behind it. It's just that every single one of these agents, every single one of these methods, every single one of these entities and components, simply by pursuing their own interest, their own power, simply by pursuing their personal power and interests, whether it's a government official or some other institution, the result is the same. That result is a quicker and quicker and quicker unraveling of the foundational fabric of this country, a quicker and quicker unraveling of our way of life, of our societal cohesion, of our culture, and the taking away of our liberties. It's coming quicker and quicker. It doesn't matter whether or not there is some vast conspiracy behind it all, because the result is the same. They don't have to be working together. The result is the same. It is no surprise that those found in Capitol buildings and executive mansions have incrementally increased their own power over the rest of us. An ethical conscience gets stronger the more one allows it to guide them. It gets weaker every time the individual resists. Why should it be any different with the artificial conscience of the American government? It is no mystery why those in power want to replace liberty with tyranny. And while the constructs of the Republic remain in place, they did in the Roman Republic too, even after their de facto republic died. And while at times those in power did their job of protecting the natural rights of us citizens, Anyone paying attention should realize by now that once in power, our representatives seek ways to eliminate or at least weaken the limits placed on their own power. We're aware of people who were in power who have used insider knowledge to enrich themselves. But it's not just that. These supposed representatives and statesmen will never do anything for the long-term benefit of American citizens that reduces any amount of their power. They are not going to pass legislation that limits their policy-making ability. They're not going to pass legislation that limits the executive's enforcement power. They are not going to put term limits on themselves. In fact, I was beside myself when I saw people applauding the Republicans in 2016 for putting up term limit legislation. And I think I talk about this somewhere in the book because the legislation they were putting forward grandfathered in the very people we wanted out and instead limited the amount of time new representatives who would be bringing new ideas and new perspectives could serve. It would limit the amount of time the people who we wanted to replace the lifetime politicians with, it would kick them out before they had a chance to do anything. Yet it grandfathered in the people, the lifelong politicians, the lifelong government officials that we actually wanted out with that term limit legislation. It killed me that people thought this was a good idea. Now, eventually, maybe the old guys would die off, but come on. As long as they were alive, they were not going to do anything to limit themselves. Instead, this term limit legislation actually would increase their power as long as they were alive. I was beside myself. Anyway, anyone paying attention should realize by now that once in power, our representatives seek ways to eliminate or at least weaken the limits placed on their own power. All for the common good, of course. Unfortunately, that is the problem, is it not? The common good, the general will. The problem is those in power want to tell the rest of us what is best for us. They don't want us to have freedom of thought to the point where we might disagree with them. They know better than we do what will make us happy. And they need unlimited power to implement all that is required to achieve the greater good. And I implore you to go back to chapter 1 if you don't remember why or how the common good, the general will, the general welfare, why or how that is the problem and isn't the solution we're looking for, should ever be looking for. The fabric is wearing thin and the conscience is failing and democracy is prevailing. Thus, the desperation is real. If we have exchanged our constitutional federal republic for a democracy, we have willingly handed ourselves over to tyranny. But it also seems that we have been encouraged to do everything to strengthen democracy, to strengthen this tyranny over ourselves. How did we get here? So, up to this point, I've really only been talking about the loom the fabric was built upon and maybe a few threads within the fabric. Unfortunately, a lot of people equate government with society, and really who can blame them? We have politicized everything. We've turned our society into a de facto democracy through other societal institutions and functions. But it is very dangerous to equate our entire society with the form of governance we are currently living under. So when I ask, how did we get here? It's not just the government and our officials we should be examining and holding up to the light. How did we get to the point where Americans don't even recognize they're in a pot of boiling water, not a hot tub jacuzzi? So in chapters 5 and 6, we're going to look at the most important threads that were placed on the loom that informed the designing of the government and start introducing the idea of how we've been fooled into thinking the agents of our destruction are actually the saviors of our society.